He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Well, I'm going to take on a topic that I don't much like. I've written about it many, many years ago in Men in Black. But I'm going to take it on because it's just getting harder and harder to ignore it, and I don't want to ignore it. And that is what's going on in these federal district courts in this country today. These federal district courts that obviously want to get into our bedrooms and want to make privacy decisions, they claim in the name of civil rights. I'm really not interested in taking calls on whether you support or oppose same-sex marriage. That's not what I want to get into here. What I want to get into here is which part of our government should be making these decisions, if any part of our government. Do states retain the authority to define marriage, or don't they? And if they don't retain the authority to define marriage, then who does? Or can you marry whatever you want, whomever you want, for any reason you want, or as many people as you want? Does a civil society have the power to authorize state governments to set ground rules? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Or should federal judges be making these decisions? Or should there be one decision, and only one decision, on what is or is not marriage? You know, what bothers me about what's going on in this country today, ladies and gentlemen, is we're not having a debate on this. We have one federal court after another stating that same-sex marriage is a human right. We have one knucklehead federal district judge, as I'm sure you've heard today because it was on Breitbart and some of the other sites, indicating that the Constitution authorizes this while citing the Declaration of Independence. These are the kind of idiots now that are populating our courts. But the point isn't even that. The point is this particular judge, it's not that she doesn't know which document applies. That's bad enough. But it doesn't matter to her because she's philosophizing on the court. She's imposing her policy preferences on the people of Virginia. We have an attorney general in Virginia, and he's not the first. Mark the Red Herring, who gets elected by the skin of his teeth. Millions of people vote, and he won by a couple hundred votes. And then after he wins, a few weeks later, announces he's not going to defend the Constitution of Virginia, where about 10 years ago, the people of Virginia actually voted to amend their Constitution to define marriage as a traditional marriage between a man and a woman. California did the same thing. Absolute lawlessness. Again, I know it's hard. Put aside what you think of same-sex marriage. Just put it aside for now. We have attorneys general who won't defend their state constitution. And these aren't constitutional amendments that were adopted 100 years ago. They were adopted 10 years ago, or 6 years ago, or 8 years ago. And it's not at all clear, and to me it's clear, but at a minimum it's not at all clear that it's unconstitutional for a state to define marriages between a man and a woman. Since when is that the case? So what's happening? I mean, rather than seeking our input, what's happening is we have 18 states, most through state judicial fiat, which is bad enough, which authorize, as a matter of law, same-sex marriage, and the District of Columbia. So people who oppose this, well, they can't seem to have any avenue where they can advance their position. If you lose an election in a particular state on the issue of traditional marriage, then you've lost. If the state courts rule under the state constitutions that same-sex marriage is constitutional, then you've lost. If federal judges rule that constitutional amendments adopted by the people of a particular state or their state legislatures are unconstitutional, then you've lost. You see what I'm saying? What's happening now is the iron fist of the left is taking over, whatever your view on same-sex marriage. This is supposed to be a republic. This is supposed to be a federal republic. Simply saying something is a civil rights issue doesn't make it so. It doesn't allow judges to throw off their black robes and act like rabble-rousers in the streets and start carrying placards, if you will, talking about liberty and justice and equality and so forth. They're there to apply the law. They're there to apply a state constitution or a federal constitution. And if something clearly violates that, fine, overrule it. But this clearly does not. There's some states that are embracing same-sex marriage, and most of the states aren't. Now, the Supreme Court set the groundwork for this. And I wrote about this, I think it's 9 years ago now, Men in Black. The Supreme Court set the groundwork for this, the way it has set the groundwork for other things. And one of the main decisions was a case called Lawrence. Lawrence. I don't know if you've heard of it, but in this case, well, I'll tell you what, and specifically what I said about it many years ago. It's Lawrence versus Texas, by the way. 2003 decision. Stick with me on this. In 1998, a Texas sheriff's deputy responded to a report of a man going crazy with a gun. The deputy entered the suspect's apartment through the unlocked front door. And although he found no one with a gun, he saw John Lawrence and Tyrone Garner engaging in a sex act. He arrested them for violation of Texas sodomy statute, a Class C misdemeanor, and they spent the night in jail. The sodomy statute in Texas prohibited conduct between same-sex couples, but not different sex couples. So Lawrence and Garner were charged and convicted before a justice of the peace. Roger Nance, who had called in the complaint, was also arrested for filing a false police report, for which he spent 15 days in jails. And after a new trial in criminal court, the convictions of Lawrence and Garner were upheld by the Texas Court of Appeals. The two men sought protection under the Equal Protection and Due Process Clauses of the 14th Amendment. The U.S. Supreme Court took up the case. Now, I want you to think about this. These statutes in the states, even 10 years ago, were almost always ignored and were mostly being repealed. There were only 12 or 13 states left with these statutes. The U.S. Supreme Court took up the case. It heard oral arguments in 2003. And the questions posed by the justices during oral argument revealed much about their thinking. Justice Stephen Breyer quoted a childish poem to mock the idea that a state could ban certain conduct simply because it didn't like it. He also badgered the lawyer representing Texas for trying to justify the sodomy statute. Quote, "You've not given a rational basis except to repeat the word morality," Breyer said, as if morality is an insufficient basis for the law. Just telling you what happened. Stick with me. Breyer summed up the main argument for overruling prior Supreme Court precedent in a case called Bowers that I don't have time to get into. He said it was not about sodomy per se, but the people in their own bedrooms have their right to do basically what they want if it's not hurting other people, quote unquote. In June 2003, the Supreme Court's majority opinion in Lawrence, Kennedy wrote it, and it was long on philosophy and short on precedent. Kennedy's opinion is a result in search of a rationale. He began with, "Liberty protects the person from unwarranted government intrusions into a dwelling or other private places." This statement means absolutely nothing from a constitutional perspective. Every criminal or immoral act can be justified on the grounds of exercising liberty. But Kennedy has a purpose in such an approach. By using catch-all words like liberty rather than applying the Constitution to the issue, he seeks to expand the plain meaning of the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, which prohibits the states from depriving any person of life, liberty, or property without due process, to grant rights not mentioned elsewhere in the Constitution. You see, the place to fight statutes like this, most of which don't exist anymore, and they certainly don't exist after this decision, is in the states, where they have been fought and have been defeated in the vast majority of cases. So, Justice Scalia, writing in this decision, he said the Texas statute could not possibly be a denial of equal protection, since it is precisely the same distinction regarding partners that is drawn in state laws prohibiting marriage with someone of the same sex while permitting marriage with someone of the opposite sex. His point is, wait a minute. Every state, virtually every state, I think at the time maybe except for Hawaii, has laws upholding traditional marriage and outlawing same-sex marriage for, among other reasons, these sex acts. So how can the Sex Act be constitutionally protected as a matter of federal constitutional law under the 14th Amendment? How can sodomy be protected under the 14th Amendment, and yet same-sex marriage is not protected under the 14th Amendment? And he concluded, this is where we're apparently headed. Where this court or some other court is going to rule that under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, the Equal Protection Clause, same-sex marriage is not just permitted, but it is compelled. Not meaning that you must marry somebody of the same sex, but it is compelled on the states to recognize it as a federal constitutional right. I'm not done with the explanation. Hold on, there's more to go. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Now, this decision by the Supreme Court wasn't lost on Lambda Legal Defense and Education Fund. And that group, and the ACLU and others, put together a legal strategy, more specifically a litigation strategy, where they form shopped and picked certain state courts and certain federal courts to bring their cases. And they also decided to widen the litigation. That is, not just within the states, but to force one state to recognize same-sex marriage, imposed, for instance, by the Massachusetts Supreme Court, on another state. Because Hawaii and Massachusetts had both instituted same-sex marriage by judicial decree. In 1996, Congress passed overwhelmingly the Defense of Marriage Act, after Hawaii acted and before Massachusetts. Signed into law by by Clinton, and it was passed overwhelmingly by Republicans and Democrats. And this law stated no state, territory, or possession of the United States or Indian tribe shall be required to give effect to any public act, record, or judicial proceeding of any other state, territory, or possession or tribe respecting a relationship between persons of the same sex that is treated as a marriage under the laws of such other state, territory, possession, or tribe, or a right or claim rising from such a relationship. So they didn't want, in essence, one state to be able to impose its will on another state because of the litigation strategy that was being used. And as you know, in essence, that law was thrown out by the Supreme Court last year. So what defenses are left for the states? None. None. 1,000 federal judges, give or take 100, have taken over this issue, have seized it from the American people, have seized it from the state legislatures. And they're imposing their will, one state after another, as a result of a more than decade-long litigation strategy. It doesn't matter if you voted in your state on a constitutional amendment. They're being thrown out. They're being thrown out. And now it'll be decided by the United States Supreme Court by one justice, most likely Anthony Kennedy. And that decision will be imposed on the entire nation. The hell with a federal republic. The hell with state constitutions. The hell with diversity of beliefs. Because this has now become a civil right. 2 years ago it wasn't. If it had been a civil right, why did Obama oppose it until 2 years ago? But this is what's going on now. The politicization of this issue and the use of the courts to impose it on every single state. I don't care what your view of same-sex marriage is. I care about the process. And I care what's happening to our country. The absolute lawlessness of every single branch of the federal government. I'll be right back.
This is Liberty's 911 hotline. The Mark Levin Show. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
Another interesting fact. If the court does do what I think it's going to do, and we'll see, that is the Supreme Court, impose its will on the entire nation with one justice making the decision, the only way to respond to that is for a federal constitutional amendment. I'm not encouraging it, I'm just pointing it out. And you will hear Republicans say, that's outrageous. That's outrageous. You can't have a federal constitutional amendment. Why? Is it now a state issue, now that the court has seized authority from the states to make decisions about this? And I just want to remind you folks, the amendment process is quintessential federalism. It requires 3/4 of the states to ratify. It's far more in line with our constitutional system. As a matter of fact, it's in black and white in the Constitution than the power that the Supreme Court has seized for itself. Now, I do want to address this issue because this comes up time and time and time again as if this is some kind of a strong argument. But keep in mind what I'm saying. We've talked about Obama seizing power more and more so. We've talked about Congress seizing power more and more so. We've talked about the fourth branch, the administrative state, the EPA and so forth, seizing power more and more so. And I just want to circle back and tell you the courts do the same damn thing, which is why this whole federal Leviathan is out of control. Michael, Westchester, New York, the great WABC. Go.
Hi, thanks. Look, these developments, and I don't watch them as closely as you, but they all just seem parallel to Loving versus Virginia and whatever led up to that.
Well, tell everybody what that case was about.
Sorry?
Tell everybody what that case was about.
That was the case that I believe in Virginia outlawed, or the Supreme Court said that states could not outlaw mixed-race marriage, right?
Because Virginia did not allow mixed-race marriage, and under the 14th Amendment, the Supreme Court overruled that.
Right, yeah.
Right, so what's the difference between that and what we're talking about today?
To people who don't pay that close attention.
No, I'm asking you, what's the difference? Don't worry about people. I'm asking you, what's the difference between that case and what we're talking about today?
Well, aside from the obvious of a racial...
yeah, okay. I don't really want to do word games. As a legal matter, what's the difference?
In the sense of the Supreme Court overturning...
All right, let me help you out here. The 14th Amendment was specifically ratified by the states after the Civil War to ensure that blacks who'd been enslaved would have the same rights as whites.
Okay,
correct?
I understand that...
Hold on now. No, you don't. What does it have to do with same-sex marriage?
I'm talking about...
So in other words, what the Supreme Court said is a white marries a white, a black marries a black. If a black marries a white or so forth, that can't be outlawed by a state under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution.
Right, but it's been many years since the 14th Amendment was limited to racial...
Oh, I know, it's being expanded. That is the vessel through which, in many respects, the left keeps pouring its agenda. There's no question about that. No question about that whatsoever. So I guess for all these decades, actually for more than a century, somehow we just didn't read the 14th Amendment properly. All of a sudden, not even the Supreme Court has officially gone there yet, by the way, but it's headed there. All of a sudden, a few federal judges make this decision, and all of a sudden it's been there the whole time.
Well, why? I mean, there's so many categories of people who have been, where the 14th Amendment has been viewed as...
No, but you're bringing it up in the context of marriage and race. You brought up a specific case that's always brought up, and I'm telling you that it has nothing to do with this. Zero.
I see your position legally.
Well, that's what we're talking about when you go in front of a court. Now, if I'm an activist judge or I have an activist court, they're going to take that equal protection clause and stretch it to whatever they want, whenever they want. I mean, that's the way a judicial oligarchy works. But what really gets me is, rather than allow the tide of history in this case to have its effect, where states are moving in this particular direction, it's not good enough. It's an iron fist that must be imposed on every corner of the country, regardless of the state, regardless of the belief of the people in the state, regardless of voting on constitutional amendments in the state. Even the federal government, the DOMA, has to essentially be thrown out. Why? Because now it's an agenda-driven issue, and everything must buckle to it. There cannot be an escape clause. There cannot be a recourse. Zero. So what started out in Hawaii and Massachusetts must be imposed on Texas and Alabama and whatever. Correct?
I see the way I see your point in terms of judicial kind of dominance.
Well, let's talk about the civil society and put all government aside right now. Let's put it aside. We don't support majoritarianism, right? Because that could be a disaster.
I think
we don't support... Okay, I'm going to continue. We don't support factionalism because that can be a disaster. So the way we make these decisions is very, very important. If they're going to be embraced by society as a whole.
You look
Go
at
ahead. I'll give you your final word now.
Yeah, if you look at it from just a broad civil society perspective, this is maybe accelerating it.
Accelerating what?
Marriage, but it's an evolving thing, just like all these other evolutions.
So if it's an evolving thing, why is the court involved?
Well, I think that's affecting it by maybe 10 years. I mean, it's not that
All right, thank you for your call. You're just popping off. I mean, maybe it's affecting it by 10 years, maybe it's not. The point is, there's no reason for the federal courts to be involved in this. There's no reason for the federal courts to be imposing their will, one district judge after another, in what is strategic litigation, forum shopping. There's no reason. If you believe that this is the natural evolution that's going on in this society. What we have is utter lawlessness. These federal judges, and what they're doing, in my humble opinion, we have state attorneys general, first in California, with your proposition there, now in Virginia, and in other states who refuse to uphold decisions by the people. I mean, does Republican government matter or not? Little r Republican. Unless, of course, you just call whatever issue you support a civil rights issue, even issues that may not be civil rights issues. So how are we going to decide these things? So what next? If we get our 5 justices on the court, they throw it out? Is that how this is decided? And is that what the framers said? Is that what the framers wanted? Of course not. No. The point is, if you support same-sex marriage, you fight like hell for it in your states. That's what you do. And some states will have it and some won't. But if you want a top-down decision from the courts, then you are paving a path, and this is done all too often, for giving power to a handful of people, enormous power, who can one day use it against you. And I'm tired of it. I'm really tired of it. I don't think the American people are bigots. Are there bigots among us? Yes. I'm talking about in the aggregate. We're the most tolerant people on the face of the earth. Ask the people who crawl over the border and come into this country from every walk of life. If we weren't, why do they come here? In the case of a white marrying a black, or a white marrying a white, or a black marrying a black, or what have you, whatever combination, the fact of the matter is, it's different sex marriage. Opposite sex marriage. And you cannot discriminate among races when you're talking about opposite sex marriage. The court in Lovey didn't say, oh, and by the way, this applies to same-sex marriage too. No. And for all those who think the Supreme Court is so wonderful, and some of my libertarian friends who say, we need activist courts, activist courts. No, we need originalist courts, not activist courts. All of a sudden, perfect people or more perfect people are on the Supreme Court than in your neighborhood. All of a sudden, we're supposed to whitewash history. Forget about the Dred Scott decision in which the great federal Supreme Court, in essence, upheld slavery and helped trigger the Civil War. Oh, yeah, forget about that one. Forget about the Fugitive Slave Acts, which were also upheld by the court and passed by the federal Congress. 2 of them. Yeah, we got to whitewash history. Centralized government is good. Particularly the court, the most centralized part of the government. Or Plessy versus Ferguson, upholding segregation in Louisiana on a private railroad. Yeah, that was a good one. That promoted racism for another 100 years. Or how about Korematsu, that Supreme Court decision, the federal Supreme Court, during World War II, with the great Franklin Roosevelt issuing a military order. Oh, those executive orders are just magnificent. Rounding up 110, 120,000 Japanese Americans of Japanese descent, and moving them into camps in the interior of the country. Where was the constitutional basis for that? And the Supreme Court upheld it. Or Roe versus Wade. For me, the most disgusting decision in American history. Not only wiped out every state law where about half of the states upheld abortion in one form or another and half the states outlawed it in one form or another, that apparently wasn't good enough. 50 million abortions later. 50 million abortions later. Now, even if you believe in quote-unquote choice, oh, that word is so pathetic in that context, but okay. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg said the way that decision was done was wrong. So I guess they're going to do another one in a similar way. I'm not predicting, although I suspect they will, given what's going on in the lower courts. See, what they don't want is 100 years from now, historians to look back on these rulings as they look back on these other rulings that I just mentioned to you. They want to be ahead of the civil rights curve, and they've decided that this is a civil rights issue. They don't want to be the justices who are now frowned upon and worse, and rightly so, who upheld slavery and segregation and all the rest of it. But this is not that issue. And I'm very, very troubled. Again, putting aside what you believe on this issue, which is hard for people to do. They get very emotional. This is not the way this is supposed to be decided. The states are now impotent. They have no authority. The federal courts are in charge. This is their issue, and they're running with it. And I don't know what the answer is, but it's very troubling to me, as is Obama's imperial presidency. And what do they all have in common, ladies and gentlemen? The constant concentration of power in the hands of a relative few ruling elites in Washington, D.C. The centralization and concentration of power. And that's the greatest threat we face today. That's the greatest threat we face today. I was reading my most recent issue of Imprimis, and I was struck by something profound. And that is, what if every one of you shared your copy of Imprimis with at least one other person? You do have a copy of Imprimis, right? And you know Hillsdale, it's one of the nation's finest liberal arts colleges, teaches the Constitution to every student, and it doesn't accept any government funding, not a penny. And you should know about Imprimis. That's Hillsdale's free monthly speech digest, now reaching over 2.7 million homes, and many of you. In this issue, Larry Arnn, professor, doctorate, expert on the Declaration of Independence, expert on Winston Churchill, and so many other things. He explains the hidden connection between education and how America is being governed today. If you haven't read it, you really should. It's a classic. And if you have read it, give your copy to someone else. The more people read it and understand the underlying problems that lead to big government, especially in this election year, the better. And if you don't already receive Imprimis, you really should. It'll take you a few minutes to get it. It's absolutely free, and you sign up by going to levinforhillsdale.com. That's Levin for Hillsdale.com, and you'll get instant access to Dr. Arnn's profound message. And you'll receive future issues delivered straight to your mailbox, no strings attached. So let's get this done. Go to levinforhillsdale.com and sign up. That's levinforhillsdale.com.
Mark Levin.
Lawlessness is so bad, ladies and gentlemen. Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that there should be lawyers representing both sides of an issue in front of a court? Do you think so, Mr. Producer? There should be lawyers representing both sides of an issue in a court. Yes. And it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. It's a disgusting spectacle, actually, to see attorneys general who are elected to suddenly say, well, I'm switching positions, I don't agree, and not only withdrawing from a case, but joining the other side, leaving the people of a state, like the people of Virginia or the people of California or whomever, without a lawyer. Because the court, in a very bizarre twist of logic, was wondering whether the people in California were even properly represented. That is, it wasn't concerned so much, the court, that the people of California who voted for Prop 8 had a lawyer. It was concerned, well, why did they have a lawyer? The circuit court didn't have the power to assign a lawyer. So I'm thinking to myself, well, who represented the people of California? Who represented the people of Virginia today in federal court? Nobody. Nobody. So the game is fixed. The system is fixed. They call it a justice system. That's not a justice system. At every turn, they're throwing up obstacles. Even the basics that we accept. Even mass murderers have the right to a lawyer. Even terrorists have a right to a lawyer, right? That's right. Even a cop killer has a right to a lawyer 20 years later, 30 years later, who should be head of the Civil Rights Division, right? But the people of California, the people of Virginia, other people who voted, law-abiding citizens, apparently they don't have a right to a lawyer to represent their interests and their views in federal court. And apparently the Supreme Court's perfectly happy with that, as we're lurching, in my view, to an inevitable decision. I could be completely wrong, but I rarely am. My concern here is the rule of law. My concern here is lawlessness, whether from a president, Congress, a bureaucracy, or the court. I'll be right back.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. This is Hour 2. I'm Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. So what's the short-term solution to this? There is no short-term solution to this. That's why nobody can come up with one. Elect more Republicans. Well, we've done that. And what happens? You appoint a Souter, and he flips. You appoint a Blackman, and he flips. You appoint you could go down just the list, and they flip and they flip. Republicans have been told this for decades. Look at your Congress. Running as Tea Party conservatives, and about 2/3 of them aren't. Our prior president, Republican, was a spendaholic. And you can see that his advisors have learned nothing. They're writing today, trashing Ted Cruz, trashing the Tea Party. This is what we get because of the leadership in the Republican Party. This is why so many commentators are dumbfounded. They're befuddled after analyzing the situation, demonstrating their frustration with what's going on in this country. They want a quick solution. And this is the problem, to some extent, with we conservatives and constitutionalists. There's not a quick answer to this. It's taken us 80 to 100 years to get to this point. And that's why it's important that we talk up now and promote this notion of a state convention process. The state legislatures need to step up. The state legislators, who claim to be conservatives, need to step up. Our Constitution is being eviscerated as we speak. Oh, there's nothing wrong with the Constitution, Mark. It's the people we elect. Well, I'll say. But they've changed the Constitution. To the extent they honor it at all, they honor it in the breach. So how do you fix it? There is no short-term solution. We want to slow down what's going on, of course. And you can slow that down by electing a unabashed conservative as president. First, you got to nominate one, which we seem to have a problem doing, given the ruling class French Republicans. And then you need a Senate and a House that are actually led by statesmen, not whining, complaining losers. But it's not a question of a short-term or a long-term solution. The issue is a solution. And in the Liberty Amendments, I'm not hawking the Liberty Amendments. You can buy it or not, you can read it or not, but there are two reform amendment proposals. One is, among other things, that 3/5 of the state legislatures have the power to override a majority Supreme Court ruling if they act within 24 months of the ruling. It's not easy to do. But why should one justice, even two justices, be making decisions about marriage, about health care, about what have you? Why shouldn't the body politic be involved? And I'm not talking about plebiscites or referenda. I'm not talking about anything of the sort. I'm talking about representative government, where protections are built in, where you have a supermajority but not an insurmountable supermajority. And that's where I came up with this idea of 3/5 of the state legislatures having the power to overrule a Supreme Court decision, a majority decision, and it wouldn't happen often. But it doesn't need to happen often. And in the reform amendment that I have produced, that I drafted, no court would have judicial review, nor would Congress be able to review it. It's a final decision by 3/5 of the state legislatures. And they won't act unless the people are up in arms about what's going on. Imagine if we had this in place prior to the Dred Scott decision. But we didn't. And the other thing that I propose that would relate to something of this sort, federal judges amending the Constitution, that's unacceptable to me. The President of the United States amending the Constitution with his declarations, that's unacceptable to me and to you. So the state legislatures need to have a more direct way. Once the state convention process has convened and done its work and the states have ratified, one of the amendments that I propose that it ratifies empowers the state legislatures 2/3 to directly amend the Constitution. Again, it is a difficult challenge to get 2/3 of the states to do anything. So on the one hand, it's criticized as being too onerous. On the other hand, it's criticized as being proposed at all. But there's no reason why one or two justices should be able to amend the Constitution, or the President, or Congress, or the EPA, and what have you, and the states are utterly impotent. That's absurd. So those who say there's nothing wrong with the Constitution, the problem is there's something wrong with the people who have sworn to uphold it. And to say we just need better people to uphold it defies 100 years of experience. Yes, we need better people to uphold it. But the fact is, you can't always elect them. You can't always appoint them. You hope you do a good job. But the fact is, we don't all the time. And we can't all the time. So there needs to be a structural process in place that breathes life back into the Constitution so we have a republic at the end of the day. I want you to think of it this way. With these judges ruling as they're ruling, and not just in the case of same-sex marriage or what have you, immigration as an example, or whatever. And ultimately, in many of these cases, the Supreme Court making a final judicial decision. Don't you think these judges and justices will have it in the back of their minds that if they go too far, then decisions will be taken out of their hands, in some cases, by 3/5 of the state legislatures, if I have my way. Then it's important that those courts at least keep in mind that they don't have dictatorial powers. And if they choose to conduct themselves that way, or a president, for that matter, then there's recourse. Then the people have recourse. Right now you have no recourse whatsoever. None. Zero. And no matter how many books I read from my libertarian friends, no matter how many books I read from my socialist friends going on and on about how the court is there to save us from ourselves, the fact of the matter is, we are here to save us from a centralized federal leviathan. And if we don't stand up, nobody will. We can keep barking at the door of Congress, barking at the door of the White House, barking at the door of the Supreme Court, and that's all it'll be, barking. It frustrates me to hell that solid conservatives out there don't take the time, you do, but so many others, to really understand this process, which I originally opposed because I was knee-jerk too, and then I decided, no, let me really dig into this. And then a light goes off. It's so obvious. There is no short-term solution. There's a solution. And the sooner we get behind it, the faster it can be addressed. If Congress won't stand up to a lawless president, if the Supreme Court won't stand up to a lawless president and a lawless Congress, if the states are prohibited unconstitutionally from standing up to a lawless federal government, well, then what's the solution? The solution is to go back to the Constitution. Those of us who revere it need to understand that this is part of the Constitution. Or we can just keep beating our chests, or we can just keep complaining, whining, as our country slips through our fingers. And again, I'm saying on this same-sex marriage issue, this is just the latest example of what's happening and who's making the decisions and how our Republican system, small r Republican system, is being destroyed. And people are acting out of emotion, they're acting out of politics, they're acting out of policy preferences. They have no respect for the institutions, no respect for the Constitution. And so, this is what I'm trying to address. Oh, I know it's Friday. I could sit here and talk about BS, but I choose not to. This decision was handed down yesterday. I think we need to pay attention to it. 2013 brought us the train wreck rollout of Obamacare, the IRS scandal, NSA spying on Americans, and continued runaway debt. We can't just sit here and watch America get ruined. It's a new year, a new opportunity for us to save this great nation. So we need to be honest with ourselves, folks. Even though times are tough, even though many of you are working harder than ever before, I understand, I really do. But it's not going to get any easier to save this country. And save this country we must. That's why the Tea Party Patriots are making it easier for you to do your part. If you have a few minutes, go to TeaPartyResponders.com and take action right now. This year, Tea Party Patriots will have a whole host of ways for you to get engaged in restoring our Constitution. Just go to TeaPartyResponders.com to identify how you may want to volunteer. It's where your passion to save America gets turned into action. And it's brought to you by the Tea Party Patriots. So if you have a minute, help save the country. Go to TeaPartyResponders.com.
Mark Levin.
We don't rest on Friday. Nope. See, Obama's off and running. It's cold around the White House. It's cold on the East Coast. So off to California. He wants to spend $1 billion on some climate change BS. Billion here, $1 billion there, $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there. That's our man. But it's really another couple of days for playing golf. Rancho Mirage, nice and warm out there in the 80s. On our dime, you and me. And in the Washington Examiner, our buddy Paul Bedard reports, citing Judicial Watch, that this is the 23rd vacation. The 23rd. With another President's Day bachelor holiday planned by President Obama, this time golfing in California in Aspen, Colorado. Aspen too? Oh. Resort reporters on the lookout for the annual First Lady ski trip this weekend. The taxpayers' tab for the first family's vacations has topped $2.4 million. And by the way, that's just the start because they can't seem to get all the information. You know, the White House, they don't want you to know. Man, they've had a hell of a time. Hawaii, Martha's Vineyard, Spain, Colorado, Florida, Africa, all over the place. I just get so disgusted. It really is just so damn disgusting. But there you have it. You know what? I'm going to take some calls. I didn't take many calls yesterday. I'll take some calls now. A couple other things I want to discuss with you. But Obama, by the way, he was at a conference. What, do they all meet in Cambridge, Maryland now? Is that the deal? With the Democrats. And he repeated what he says all the time. Cut 10, Mr. Producer. Go.
I want to work with Congress to make that happen. But I'm not going to wait because there's too much to do. And America does not believe in standing still. America insists on moving forward.
Mm-hmm. I didn't hear any of this at the top of the news hour. Nothing about this, that the president keeps insisting that he can act without Congress. The whole damn system is broken. It's just broken. Dan, Springfield, Missouri, the great KSGF. Go.
Hey there, sir. I'm so thankful that you was able to take my call. I'm a little slow, and I hope you'd help me out on this one. Can we use this current law that is so bad against the liberals in that since you can't restrict someone against a same-sex marriage, can you apply that to the Second Amendment and say, well, you can't tell this person or that person that they can't have a gun because, say, they're in Texas going to California. Can you say, well, because in Texas I can have a gun, I can have it in California?
All right, I got it. Here's the problem when you say, can we say? We don't get to say anything.
Okay.
Do you think this liberal activist judge would say, you know what, and I'm going to apply it to the Second Amendment? I doubt it. And that's the problem. These are result-oriented policymakers dressed up as judges. Now, just so you know, a number of states have gotten together to challenge New Jersey's law signed by Chris Christie. You know, the putative Republican nominee who's being pushed hard by certain media outlets, challenging the right to carry law that he signed.
All right.
Several states have gotten into that case to say, hey, look, we're concerned about this case in this law in New Jersey because we're afraid that it'll spread to other states. So, in essence, they're kind of taking up your point. But in terms of us saying we can bring litigation, but we don't get to rule on it. And sometimes that's a problem. All right, my friend, it was a good question. Thank you for your call. All right, let's continue, shall we? Terry, Dallas, Texas, the great WBAP. Go.
Good evening, Mark. How are you?
All right, thank you.
I'm just as frustrated as you are, and I've learned so much from you. There's a lot I don't know, obviously, but what troubles me, too, I mean, I had no idea that they could even do this sort of thing state to state and do it legally. And what other issues do you think they could...
Well, I don't believe they are really doing it legally. It has the patina of being legal because you have the institutions of the law doing it. But this is utter lawlessness. What is your question? I'm sorry.
Well, I was wondering what other issues they could try to pull this crap with.
Well, they try and pull it all the time. Look at the immigration issue. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. Obama refused to enforce federal immigration law passed by Congress, signed by prior presidents. He said, look, this is a matter of discretion, executive discretion. And what did the Supreme Court say? Hey, you're right. So then Obama goes to town. He says, all right, I'm not enforcing this part of the immigration law. I'm changing this part of the immigration law. I'm not looking at this part of the immigration law. He does it with the courts imprimatur, under the patina of law. The law is being used to defend that which is lawless. That, my friend, is another definition of tyranny. I'll be right back.
They call him Mr. Right, Mr. Conservative, and Mr. Constitution. But you can call him Mark at 877-381-3811.
Let's go to Willie, Fairfax, Virginia, the great WMAL. Go.
Hi, Mark. I just wanted to disagree with you. Normally I agree with you on most things, but my feeling about gay marriage, and I pointed out to your screener, I'm not gay, but I have gay friends, but, you know,
All right,
you're not
listen,
going to...
I'm not gay and I have gay friends. That has nothing to do with anything. Go ahead.
By telling somebody they can't marry their gay partner, you're not going to make them become...
You didn't hear anything I said, did you?
Well, I mean, isn't that tyrannical?
Did I tell somebody they shouldn't get married? Did I talk about the process that a society needs to go through to make these decisions? Why do you sound like a liberal?
Well, I think that the majority of people now think that the other way. I mean, the law...
Well, if the majority of the people think the other way, why are the courts involved?
Well, I don't think the courts have caught up with the consent, you know, what people want.
What do you mean you don't think the courts have caught up? The courts are dictating to the states that have said no. So if you believe it's caught up with the people, why don't you let the people decide? Why don't you let things take their course?
Well, I think if the people were to decide again, I think it would be a different...
I think you're rambling and buffoonish, and I'm going to tell you why. Don't call me and tell me I agree with you most of the time. You didn't even hear what I said for a whole full hour. I'm going on about how these decisions are supposed to be made in a republic, about how a civil society is supposed to work. I didn't even give you my opinion on same-sex marriage. And then you go, oh, the Republicans, it's tyrannical. It says what's tyrannical is to have federal judges make these decisions out of whole cloth, overturning state constitutions, and you say, well, the people don't, the people want this. Then let the people speak. You're not even making any sense.
But aren't they entitled to equal protection of the law, gay people?
How about polygamists? Are they entitled to equal protection of the law?
Well, but I'm not looking to marry 2 or 3 women.
But they are. But there's a family in Utah that was, and they went to federal court.
Well, that's
just answer the question, pal, because you're just saying there are no limits or there are limits. Where do you draw the line? Go ahead.
That's not equal protection because you're not talking about one spouse.
Oh, I see. So before, in the Lovey decision that was raised, we were talking about traditional marriage and race. Now we've changed it. Now we're talking about one spouse, not traditional marriage and race. And shouldn't that be protected under the 14th Amendment? And I'm asking you, why is that the limit?
Well, I just answered it. I don't think that they're the same thing. I think that
Well, traditional marriage and same-sex marriage aren't the same thing. Barring people based on race from marrying who are different sexes isn't the same thing as same-sex marriage.
Well, maybe
so none of these things are the same. But I'm asking you a question. Why do you draw the line there?
Well, it's hard. It is hard to, as a somewhat libertarian, it is hard to draw the line because, as long as somebody's behavior doesn't directly affect me, why should I dictate what they do? Well, how is that?
Is that what a civil society is? So if the all right, I'm gonna move on here. I don't know what to say. Well, I do know what to say. I do know what to say. As long as somebody's behavior isn't bothering me, that's a good general rule. But what if somebody's behavior isn't bothering me, but it has an overall effect on society if everybody behaves in a certain way? Or let me put it to you a different way. If everybody in society smokes pot, is that a problem? Does that affect you? If everybody in society takes heroin, is that a problem? I'm using extreme examples just to address an extreme point. I generally agree with the point, but it is not a pure point that I can accept. We have all kinds of criminal laws. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, that affect behavior that may not directly affect you, but does affect society as a whole. I'll give you an example. To be as clear as I can. I'll give you an example. What if an individual decides to have sex with a close relative? And what if it's both agreed to? They both agreed to it. Let's say a father with a daughter. I know it's grotesque. I'm just making a point. I'm not saying a minor either. With an adult daughter. Does that affect you? Does that affect society? Is that something where we should turn the other way and say, hey, look, they're two adults, let them do what they want? I say that affects society in a big way. So I can't just buy off on that sort of fortune cookie statement that, well, as long as it doesn't affect me, well, that's the test, isn't it? May not affect me directly, but what if it affects society in some perverse ways? You know, some people don't understand. This nation was founded on a Judeo-Christian ethic. Yes, it was. And I wrote about this in Liberty and Tyranny. And that's why it's such a tolerant society. Because of that fact. But there are limitations. Moral and legal. Moral and legal. That doesn't mean you're Obama and you're a radical leftist and you want to interfere in everybody's private activity. No. But there are certain basic codes, basic behaviors that are to be encouraged or discouraged. That's what a civil society is all about. And the way in which we make these decisions is crucially important, because once this decision is decided, however it's decided, same-sex marriage, you've now have these institutions exercising authority that they shouldn't have, and they may exercise it in a different way. We had an earlier caller who said, what if they do this with the Second Amendment? Exactly. That's the point. What if they do it with all the Bill of Rights? What if they do it generally? You've got courts all over the world that basically do what the government tells them to do, or they don't even need the government to tell them what to do. They're part of the government and they know what to do. And you have it in these tyrannical societies. I mean, either you believe in federalism or you don't. That doesn't mean we believe in the Articles of Confederation and state sovereignty in ways that would violate the Constitution, but this doesn't violate the Constitution, in my humble opinion, making decisions this way. And if the people are moving toward this position, fine. Then let that process play out. Why are the federal courts involved? The federal courts are involved because it's part of a litigation strategy, and that's the tyranny. That's the tyranny, in my opinion. Dave, Denver, Colorado, the great KNUS country. Go.
Wow, Mark, I absolutely love you. You're so awesome.
Well, aren't you kind? Thank you, Dave.
So great to talk to you. You know, I can't articulate like you can, but every time you talk, I understand almost everything that you say. And for that last caller to get online and just be so, he sloughed off liberty, like, that's so ignorant.
I'll tell you why I got annoyed. I'll tell you why I got annoyed with him, because he lied to the call screener. I don't care if people are liberals or libertarians or this. That. Come on in, let's have a discussion. But I don't like liars. That's what bothers me.
Yeah, it's just so it's so ignorant. I mean, liberty is so fragile.
And liberty has to be protected by a legitimate process. To just say we all should have liberty, and isn't it fair to do this, and isn't it fair to do that, well, that's called anarchy.
As long as it doesn't affect me, you know, let them, more power to them. That's just ignorance.
As long as it doesn't affect me, let me ask you something. Let's say I'm on a bus, and there's 3 guys beating the crap out of a senior citizen. Does that affect me?
Always. But it does.
But does it affect me personally? No.
No, not personally.
But does it affect us as a community? You damn right it does.
Yeah, it does.
So what should I do? Just look at it and say, well, that doesn't affect me.
Yeah. Well, those guys must have some reason to do it.
Or do we really want to live in a state, as that gentleman suggests, where all kinds of things are done, are endorsed, as a matter of fact, sex within family, and so how does that affect me directly? Well, directly it doesn't affect me, because I may not even know that it's going on next door. But if you find out that it's going on, doesn't society want to address that?
Hell yeah. I live in the lovely state of Colorado. We just legalized marijuana for some reason.
Well, here's the thing.
Now I get to try and teach my kids why it's so, you know, it can affect them so negatively to smoke marijuana, even though it's a law.
Well, here's the thing. Conservatism isn't about one thing and one thing only. You do whatever you want as long as you don't affect somebody else. Conservatism is based on human experience. And that is experience with respect to how humans conduct themselves, how they create governments, what governments can do to individuals. It's much more complex than a fortune cookie statement. And so I understand why I'm attacked by radical libertarians. I'm attacked by leftists. I'm attacked by other. I understand that because I'm a constitutional conservative. I'm not a radical libertarian. I'm not a radical Marxist. I'm not any of those things. And this is why I say often, Dave, we are the ones who are in the middle of the so-called political spectrum. We're not on this side or that side, even though they call us hard right and hard right. We're constitutionalists who believe in the civil society and protecting the civil society.
We're straight up the middle, baby.
All right, my brother. Good call. We appreciate it. Let's see here. Gordon, in Michigan. Where in Michigan are you, Gordon?
Hey, Mark. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
On Sirius Satellite.
I got a lot of respect for you.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to start by establishing who I am. I forgot to mention this to the call screener, I'll admit. I am an atheist, but I'm also a conservative. So,
right.
Yes, we do exist. Now,
not only do you exist, again, I have many acquaintances who are the same mentality.
And I don't align myself with any of the atheist groups. I think they're nuts. Anyway, here's the problem I have with gay marriage. Obviously not from a religious standpoint. The problem is our own government has created a situation where they have become so overbearing on the private sector and private businesses that as soon as gay marriage is legalized, the activist groups will go to these private companies, regardless of what the owners of these companies believe in, and demand that they then recognize those marriages and provide their same-sex married employees with the same benefit as their opposite-sex married employees. And so then, when they refuse, the government will swoop in and force them to do it. So the rights of the...
Well, let me ask you this question. A federal court or a state court has ordered a bakery to provide a wedding cake to a same-sex wedding. The baker didn't want to do it because he said it violates his religion. So we're going to get all these kinds of cases up and down the chain, and your point is, in the end, they're all going to be decided one way.
The simple fact is that the government should not be involved in it. Society needs to decide this. And if the reason that the left cannot go to society and use, talk to people, convince them to agree with them, and that kind of thing, they can't get them to do it. It takes too long. Maybe society isn't ready, whatever the reason may be. So they go to government and they force it upon us. And they've created another problem by doing so. That government is the reason that I am against gay marriage because of what government has done to our society.
All right, my friend. I understand your points. I appreciate it. AMAC. Elected officials in D.C. think Social Security is their personal ATM. They can dip into whenever they want. Well, guess what? It's not their money. It's your money. And the ATM is running dry, and no one's doing anything about it. No one except AMAC. AMAC is fighting to reform Social Security. And they've crafted a plan that's better than anything else that's been offered up. It's certainly better than the AARP's, but that's because the AARP doesn't have a plan. Or should I say, their plan is Obamacare, since they supported it and they make money from it. And I'm a proud AMAC member. I strongly urge you to become one, too. Join over 1 million AMAC members to help impact decisions coming out of D.C., protect our Constitution, and fight for our shared conservative beliefs. An AMAC member, well, what do you get if you're one? Well, you'll enjoy all the same medical, prescription, travel, and other benefits and discounts as the AARP without subsidizing the AARP's radical left agenda. So visit amac.us now and join. Again, that's amac.us, not .com. Or call 888-262-2006. That's 888-262-2006.
Mark Levin.
I'm done with this issue today. I can't take it anymore. But I thought I needed to lay it out. 2 hours is enough. I want to thank my buddy Neil Cavuto. He asked me to come on. I came on today. I really like him. He's a good man, and he really is a wonderful example. And I don't know if it's public or not. I think it is. But, he suffers from MS, and he just is a strong-willed, professional, decent guy, and a very dear friend of mine. And if you want to listen to his interview of me, you can go on my social sites. I'm not going to play it. I'm not one of these guys that plays something like this for a week. Look at me, look what I said. But we'll put it up on our social sites, Mark Levin Show Facebook, Mark Levin Show Twitter. And, yeah, he's one of about half a dozen people at Fox who like me. The rest of them pretty much don't. But I don't really care about that either. Now, I've talked about this in the past briefly. I want to talk about it a little bit next hour. And that is what the Federal Communications Commission is up to. And what amazes me, that's about the third time I've mentioned it, but it keeps progressing, so I'm keeping an eye on it, is almost no one else that I'm aware of, not that I watch or listen to everybody, in this industry that I'm in, is even raising concerns about it. But you should be worried about it, because this program and talk radio exists for you. It exists for you. And I just want you to know there are people out there, in and out of government, who do not want this program to air. There are people out there in and out of government who want to silence me and others too. But they have a real hate on for me. And as our friends at Investors Business Daily, now there's a real editorial page, folks. Why punish yourselves with the Wall Street Journal, which has exposed itself for what it is? Investors Business Daily is every single time right on the mark, in my view. The FCC, ladies and gentlemen, is now getting involved in the newsrooms in the radio business. It's also trying to get involved in the editorial and management decisions in the radio business. And I should add, the TV business too, and even newspaper newsrooms, but particularly radio. This is another shoe on the centipede that is the Stalinist administration that we're living under that is dropping. And I want to bring this to your attention. You need to know about it because this format and this show exists for you. I'll be right back.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. This is the Power Hour, the final hour, not only of the show, but the week. I'm Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. So Obama's in California. Now, where's Michelle? She going to Aspen or not? I don't know. Very busy lives. The travel officer, very, very busy. Let's see what's on the Sunday talk shows, shall we? I never watch them. I've been invited to appear on two of them. Meet the Depressed, and what's the other one? And This Week on ABC. Let's see, Meet the Depressed, former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney. This guy is very annoying to me. Now he's Mr. Conservative. Now he's out there attacking. Too late, pal. Representative Marsha Blackburn, Bill Nye the Science Guy. Now that's kind of a freaky guy, really. Let's see here. Former White House senior advisor David Axelrod. Who even wants to listen to this guy? Former White House communications director Nicole Wallace. Big lib. Another Republican under Bush. So that's a loser. Meet the Depressed. No, I don't think the American people will watch that. Now deface the nation. They've got former Senator Jim DeMint, president of the Heritage Foundation. That's it, Jim DeMint. Problem is the guy who anchors that show. What's his name, Bob Schieffer? What's he, about 112? Let's see, This Week, Kevin Spacey. Why do we give a crap what Kevin Spacey has to say? Big lib Democrat. Well, I'm sure Fox News will be different. Fox News Sunday. Let's see. Former Ohio Governor Ted Strickland. It's boring enough when they have a governor on. Now he's a former governor. Oh, that'll be thrilling. Who else? Karl Rove. For God's sakes. Don't we even get a Sunday off? I mean, God even rested one day. This Karl Rove is on the Fox News channel. I'm sorry. 7 days a week. Sometimes twice, 3 times. That stupid whiteboard. Look, I get all the percent. The guy that lost the House and the Senate in 2006. The guy that had like a 1.3% victory level with hundreds of millions of dollars. Karl Rove. All right, CNN, State of the Union. Oh, I've been invited on that one, too. John McCain. Oy, oy, oy. John McCain is on the TV 24/7. I bet they have a camera in his bathroom when he's sitting on the John. Don't you think, Mr. Producer? I'm ready. Austin Goolsbee. Austin Goolsbee, former chairman, White House Council of Economic Advisor, did such a marvelous job there, Austin. Marvelous. So we need to hear from all these losers, bar Jim DeMint. All these losers. Then there's a show called Political Capital on Bloomberg TV. I don't think I've ever watched Bloomberg TV. I don't even know if it's on my cable channels. Ron Wyden. Radical left-wing kook, chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. And he's so weird. Then we have newsmakers on C-SPAN. Let's see. David Medine. Oh, my God, David Medine! Who the hell is that? I don't even know. Chairman, Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board. Thank God for David Medine doing a hell of a job on that Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board. On Univision, Al Punto. George Zimmerman? Oh, yes, he's half Hispanic, that's right. Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez. Dominican Republican Ambassador to the U.S., Anibal de Castro. Well, that should light up the airwaves, too. So there you have it. With one or two exceptions, slop. Slop. This is the death of Sunday TV. It really is the death of Sunday TV. Who the hell wants to watch any of this stuff? I don't. And we all monitor what goes on, and then Mr. Producer here, if there's something interesting, we'll bring it to your attention. So don't waste your time. Oh, there's a lot of choices where I live. There's a huge gun show at the Dulles Convention Center that I visit often. That is the gun show. Particularly when I'm short on some rounds and want to, get some more. It's amazing. 3 years ago, I wasn't even a member of the National Rifle Association. Now I'm a member, Mr. Producer, and a proud member. And I own one. I got a beautiful gift, a special AR-15. So I've got that one. I've got a hybrid. I have 3. I've got 5 weapons now. Well, you only need one. It's the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Needs, remember? I got 5 of them. I should probably get rid of one of them, not because I want to get down to 4, but because one in particular I don't really use. So we're loaded for bear. But anyway, so that's the Sunday shows. Obama's in California. All is swell. The government is closed. And meanwhile, they're spending like drunken Marxists. Everything's just great. Let's go to Trucker Steve in the state of New Jersey. How are you, sir?
Greatest one. How are you? I'm in
Very well.
Pennsylvania. I'm in Allentown now.
Oh, you've moved along.
Oh, yeah.
All right. How you doing, bro?
Well, no. Felt frustrated out of my mind. I've made so many wrong turns today. I got forced into New York at one point from Jersey.
Did they tax you?
Yeah, $26 to go across the bridge and back, just to turn around.
Yeah.
Oh my God, about had it with this stuff today. Hey, I got a question for you, Mark. Actually,
yes,
2, if you would indulge me.
Yes, sir.
If it's good enough for the Senate and Harry Reid for 51%, why not the same for a convention of the states, 26 states?
Well, the reason is because the Senate can set its own rules, and so that's fine. But the rules for the Convention of the States are actually the numbers for the Convention of the States is in Article 5, so you can't just change it.
Okay. I was just wondering if it's good enough for the Senate, why shouldn't it be good enough for us? Get the job done and then put it back up to a higher.
Well, yeah, it's true, but the problem is the problem is the nature of law. I mean, I have a better idea. Why shouldn't Harry Reid, before he enters the Senate floor every day, have a breathalyzer test?
I don't think him or John Boehner could pass that.
Oh, jeez! How dare you, sir? By the way, are you driving an 18-wheeler? Okay.
Their chamber doors, they'd never get in. Hey, that's a good idea. They wouldn't go in there and screw anything up.
That's right.
There's a thought.
By the way, quickly, are you driving an 18-wheeler?
Yes, I am. All day.
Well, it looked like that Pennsylvania Turnpike had a hell of a problem. One of the 18-wheeler turned over.
Yeah, guess where I was this morning?
Stuck there?
276 was like a freaking ski slope this morning.
I actually know where that is.
They should have had from 80 to 78. They could have and should have had the Winter Olympics here. It was a heck of a ski slope this morning.
Well, apparently, sir, the uniforms are slowing down our speedsters. Did you know that?
Yeah.
All right, brother. Listen, I've got to roll. You take care of yourself, and thank you. We've got great listeners, and the truckers are just terrific that listen to this program. But they don't count, you see, because if they're listening on satellite or some other device and not listening on terrestrial radio, they're not counted as part of the audience. It's true. Let us go to Colorado Springs, the great KVOR. Go.
Hey, sir, how you doing today?
All right, sir. Go right ahead.
Hey, I'm still trying to recover from that McCain on the John Constantly comment that you made, so forgive me if I'm a lot of it there.
Okay.
I had two things for you. One was a quote from one of my favorite authors, celebrities, and scholars. If you don't mind me, it's very quick.
Well, who is it?
Einstein, Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
The world is a dangerous place to live, not because of the people who are evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're living that more and more each day.
I think that's true.
To me.
It is. And what's your second point?
Well, I had a question for you. I wanted to find out what you thought. I've heard about this many, many times. Everybody compares Obama versus Nixon. And I was around for Nixon as a kid, and he was portrayed as the devil.
Mm-hmm.
And what he did to cover his scandals, the scandal, Watergate, compared to the scandal after scandal after scandal we have with Obama, can you compare the two? Is one worse?
Well, yes, I can. In Nixon's case, he at least had enough concern and shame that he wanted to cover up the events that took place and keep them secret. In Obama's case, he's brazen about it. If Congress doesn't act, I will. Moreover, I would like to compare Obama to Nixon. You know, Nixon resigned, but Obama won't resign.
True.
So if Obama resigns, then I'll compare him to Nixon. In the meantime, Obama is in a class of his own, in my personal opinion. Obama is much more committed, he said it himself, to fundamental transformation. Nixon was a sellout on many issues, and politically he was trying to buy favor with the liberals, particularly when he got in trouble, and he just wasn't particularly conservative. And, I mean, George Bush, either of them, they weren't particularly conservative in many respects, too. They created a bigger bureaucracy, and particularly the second one, a massive increase in spending. But Obama's by himself because Obama really wants to trash our institutions. In other words, he's not just a big spender. He really wants to change society. He wants to change the nature of citizenship. He's really into all that hardcore radical left stuff. The others clearly were not.
Right, exactly.
But as I say, if Obama wants to be compared to Nixon, then he should resign, and then we can say, look, we had two presidents who resigned. All right, my friend, thank you. Oh, I'm hearing music. Is it just in my head? No, it's really music. All right, I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
I didn't forget the FCC. Well, Investors Business Daily, they explain the FCC has cooked up a plan. Listen to this. In addition to all the rest you know about, to place so-called researchers in U.S. newsrooms, supposedly to learn about how editorial decisions are made. Any questions as to why the U.S. is falling in the free press rankings? Yeah, I think we're rated like number 46 now. As if illegal seizures of the Associated Press phone records and the shadowy tailing of the mother of a Fox News reporter weren't menacing enough, the Obama administration is going out of its way to institute a new intrusive surveillance of the press, as if the press wasn't supine enough. Ajit Pai, a commissioner with the Federal Communications Commission, warned this week in a Wall Street Journal op-ed that a plan to dispatch researchers into radio, television, and even newspaper newsrooms called the Multi-Market Study of Critical Information Needs is still going forward despite the grave danger it presented to the First Amendment. You believe this stuff? No. Obama is much worse than Nixon. Commissioner Pai warned that under the rationale of increasing minority representation in newsrooms, the FCC, which has the power to issue or not issue broadcasting licenses, would dispatch its so-called researchers to newsrooms across America to seek their so-called voluntary compliance about how news stories are decided, as well as wade into office politics, looking for angry reporters whose story ideas were rejected as evidence of a shutout of minority views. Oh, this is scary stuff. And why am I the only one talking about it? As far as I know. Pai questioned if such a study could really be voluntary given the FCC's conflict of interest, and he might have added the Obama record of going after political opponents. The origin of the idea is a reconstruction of the fairness doctrine, inoperative since 1987 or so, to provide equal time to leftists and to their points of view in broadcasting and other media that otherwise wouldn't have a willing audience in a free market. What the hell is it any business of the government at all? It's an idea so fraught with potential for abuse, it ought to have news agencies screaming bloody murder. I have to say, I've raised it in my own company. Nobody has even responded to it. This is serious. This is a threat. The very idea of Obama hipsters showing up in newsrooms, asking questions and judging if newspapers over which they have no jurisdiction, radio and TV, are sufficiently diverse, is nothing short of thought control. But the reaction from the National Association of Broadcasters was mealy-mouthed. The FCC should consider qualitative sections of its study, it wrote. That is, it should reconsider. The FCC now says it will be closely reviewing the proposed research designed to determine if an alternative approach is merited. As a result of Pai's warning, Adweek actually reported that's a retreat. It's because of this don't rock the boat attitude that Reporters Without Borders, and that's a lib group, said the U.S. had one of the most significant declines in press freedom in the world last year, dropping 13 places to a wretched 46th in its newly released global ranking. If the SEC has its way, it can drop even further. This is the hand of tyranny, ladies and gentlemen. Obama using his bureaucracy, his departments, his agencies to spread and to delve and to collect and to harass and to coerce. I'm warning you right now, this is the third time I've raised it. Nobody's doing anything about it. Nobody's raising their voice about it but me. This is very, very serious. Not only that, happens to violate the First Amendment. I'll be right back.
This is where Hollywood liberals come for rehab. The Mark Levin Show is back at 877-381-3811.
NBC's coverage of the Olympics really sucks, so I've stopped watching it. You send this loser Lauer, and then we get story after story, something going on with Bob Costa's eyes. Who cares, quite frankly? Yeah, look at what's with his eyes. Who's looking? Who cares? 49 states. There's snow in 49 states. And Obama's in California, wants to spend $1 billion on global warming research. I tell you, this is insanity. It's absolute insanity. And then the FoxNews.com, California's transgender law allows male high schooler to make girls' softball team. I don't know, Mr. Producer, when I was in high school, I don't remember all this stuff going on. Transgendering, do you remember that? No, sharing bathrooms of men and women or those who aren't clear on what they are. I don't remember any of this stuff. We've really come of age, haven't we, ladies and gentlemen? We're really progressing as a society. What do they say? We're going forward. High school students transgendering. A California high school student who believes he is a girl trapped in a boy's body. Sorry, let's see here. Something just struck me there. Just made the girls' softball team. Pat Cordova Golf, 17. I'm just reading as it's written. A strapping senior at Azusa High School. Go Azusa! An hour east of Los Angeles can play with and against girls because of a September change in state law, which went into effect last month. So let me get this straight. He can play on both teams, Mr. Producer? Now, what if the teams play against each other? The guys play against the girls. Does he get to keep staying on the field or what? No. Okay. I don't want to get in trouble here, but this is just so bizarre. The news is getting weirder and weirder. And, of course, my damn computer froze. I hate this computer. Now I can't get to my call screen. Give me a name there, Mr. Call Screener. Andy in New Hampshire, WRKO country. And, by the way, I will not be here Monday and Tuesday. I have to take a trip. It's not a vacation, trust me. But I will be back behind the microphone Wednesday, and I'm reminded because our buddy Howie Carr from WRKO will be here on Monday. Back to Andy in New Hampshire, the great WRKO country. How are you, sir?
Very good. Thank you, Mark. Oh, great one. I wanted to ask your advice what to ask Kelly Ayotte, my senator, which I will be attending a town hall next Wednesday, and I wanted to know what your advice was for a question to ask her.
Well, I would ask her why she doesn't support enforcing the current immigration laws, and why would she say out of one side of her mouth that she believes Obama cannot be trusted to uphold the law, and out of the other side of her mouth she's talking about we need another law, which she voted for in the Senate. I would also ask her, because it's like almost 2,000 pages long, has she read the law? All of it. I mean, this is a lady who ran as a conservative Tea Party candidate and now is just another John McCain, Lindsey Graham mush.
Agreed.
So, all right, my friend. Have I helped you?
No, that was very good. Thank you very much.
It must really be cold in New Hampshire about now.
Yeah, we have about 2 feet of snow, and it's about 18 degrees out.
And the president wants to spend $1 billion to try and figure out why global warming is doing all this.
Well,
how long have you lived in New Hampshire, sir?
Actually, I'm right on the border of Massachusetts and Vermont.
Well, let me ask you a question, sir. How long have you lived there?
A good 20 years now.
Now, during your 20 years, sir, has it snowed there during the winter, yes or no?
Oh, yes. Winter is winter. There's no such thing as global warming here.
And has it been cold there every winter, yes or no?
Very much so.
So let me get this straight. For 20 years it has snowed and it's been cold in New Hampshire on the border with Vermont and Massachusetts, correct?
That's correct.
So in other words, we've had global warming for 20 years, yes?
At least 20 years.
At least 20, perhaps?
Yes.
For thousands and thousands, yeah. So you're really caught in that polar vortex.
That's what they're calling it now.
In the tri-state area there.
I never heard of a polar vortex till this year.
No, who did? Nobody. They just make this crap up. All right, my friend. God bless. There goes New Hampshire. Mark, Augusta, Georgia, the great WEZO. Go.
Hey, Mark.
Yes,
my
sir.
wife and I, Debbie, are sitting here on Valentine's. We've been without power for 56 hours now. So much for
Lord.
global warming.
Well, what's the prognosis there?
Sorry?
Do they hope to have you think they'll have it back soon?
They're telling us about 20 hours from now. That's what they're telling us now.
I'd get in my car and get out of there, seriously, and go to a motel or drive out of the state or something if you're being,
Right. Thank goodness it's warmed up here now. It got up to about 58 degrees today, and it's supposed to be, about 40 tonight. So at least it's not too bad.
So it's getting warmer there. So that's a result, you see, of global cooling. I know this doesn't make any sense, but when it gets cold, it's global warming. When it gets hot, it's global cooling.
Exactly.
How are you listening to the show?
Oh, I meant to tell you, my wife said, call Mark, because we've seen you on Fox, television. And after 56 hours, we decided to pull out our AM radio, and my wife found your channel, your show.
Well, now, how did you watch Fox?
Oh, well, we haven't watched Fox, but we've seen you on Fox many times.
Oh, in the past. I got you.
Hannity and the like,
So this is the first time you've listened to me on the radio?
Oh, yeah. We've never listened to the radio much.
Yeah. Well, listen,
we watch television, and don't listen, especially AM radio.
Well, we're very proud of our affiliate, WEZO, and thank you and your wife, and I wish you all the best there. All right. Let's go to Laura. Tampa, Florida, the great WFLA country. How are you, Laura?
I'm fine. How are you, Mark?
Very well, thank you.
I think we're the only place it's not snowing.
There's not a lot of places, apparently, the West Coast and you.
That's right. I'm originally from outside of Philly like you, though.
Whereabouts?
Trapp. I grew up in Trapp.
Trapp. What county is it? What's that?
Trapp in Collegeville.
Oh, I know where Collegeville is. Yep. Nice area.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Anyway, I just wanted to speak a little bit when it comes to the issue of the courts overturning the state constitution. I think we need to understand that all of these issues are intended to create dissension, divisiveness, and uncertainty and chaos in our population. And I don't like to go there, but I grew up in college. I had a German professor who grew up during Hitler's Germany, and he would speak about how the atmosphere was, they created a deliberate doubt among the people in the society. And as far as that's what I consider that to be the.
But you know what? It doesn't have to be Hitler's Germany to do what's going on here. It can just be its own form of authoritarianism, and I think that's what we're seeing here.
The uncertainty, I think, and the other thing is Hitler wouldn't have gotten as far as he did if the judges hadn't supported his dictates. Okay, they're the ones that sentenced people to sterilizations and things, that Hitler decreed. So, all
right, my friend, I got it. I've got it. And he, of course, he burned down their equivalent of parliament too. That didn't help. You don't have to burn down our Congress; they just surrender. What? Well, we're going to get negative press? What? If you step back and think about this. The Republican leaders attacked Ted Cruz more than they attacked Barack Obama. Just think of it that way. And you go, what? Yeah. Let us go to Terry in Phoenix, Arizona. Yes, Terry.
I just wanted to talk about the illegal immigration and how people don't realize just how difficult this is and how it's affecting not just, the states that are involved in it, but the whole U.S. And seeing how New York is now wanting to give ID cards out to illegals so they have all these rights and can do all these things. It's at the point now where, as a U.S. citizen, I have no rights. And someone who's an illegal immigrant has more rights than I do anymore. And it affects everything from how you deal with things, getting in an accident, trying to get a job. You have to be able to speak Spanish now to get a job. That's what the preference is. If you're in an accident in Arizona and the person who hits you is an illegal and they have no insurance, no driver's license, nothing happens to them. There's no consequences whatsoever. And I feel like I'm in a third world country and I'm the one that's being pretty much abused and downtrodden. And I feel like it'd be better if I was an illegal.
Well, you are a second-class citizen. We're all becoming second-class citizens here. Just listen to how our own politicians talk to us. Just read what the Wall Street Journal and some of these other phony editorial pages say about us, that there's something wrong with us. rather than our policies. This is just absurd. And as I'll repeat, the Wall Street Journal needs to move its offices down to the border so it can experience some of the love and affection that it says is pouring into the border from other parts of the country, other parts of the world. Now, keep in mind, the Wall Street Journal editorial page and their ilk have no idea who's coming across the border. None.
Well,
Zero.
The sad part is, I'm a native of Arizona, and I've been born and raised here, and I've seen a lot of things. And, living in the southern part of Arizona, and you're out, hunting or you're out doing whatever, and you come upon a huge group of illegals, you can call Border Patrol. They won't come. They don't show up. They don't, it's sad. I mean, it's literally happened to us out there, and it goes from that point to, you can't do this, you can't do that. You have to, push one for English. You have to go Spanish. Right. There's so many things that aren't right.
I'm sure if you go to Mexico, they have push 1 for Spanish, push 2 for English,
Yeah.
All right, Terry, I get the drift. I'm well aware of it. I've got friends and family that have to deal with this, and you're right. Every part of the country is being affected at some point by this, and our politicians don't give a damn, Democrat or Republican for the most part. They really don't give a damn. They're not looking out for the country. They're looking out for some special interest, whether it is the corporatists, whether it is the voters, whether it's unions. I don't mean the voters, whether it's to get more voters. Whether it's big labor now that wants more members and so forth, but nobody's really giving a damn about the nation as a whole. No question about it. Goldline. Goldline is a company I personally recommend to you, serving clients for over 50 years. Just launched Monday. This Monday, Goldline is the exclusive dealer for the Royal Canadian Mint's limited production 1/10 ounce gold bullion coin. It's a small coin, so it's more affordable. This exclusive new bullion coin, alongside its 1/4, 1/2, and 3/4 ounce companions, honors the first Special Service Unit, which fearlessly fought during World War II and led the way for today's modern Special Forces units. It's a really cool coin. And this new coin is 1/10 of an ounce and provides increased flexibility when distributing or liquidating your coins. So call today to hear about Goldline's launch specials, valid only now. Limits and conditions apply. Call Goldline today, 1-877-365-COIN. Ask them about the different payment options and read their important risk information to see if buying gold and silver is right for you. So don't wait, because this ain't going to last. Get the information now, 1-877-365-COIN. And don't forget, for a limited time and exclusively to you, just for calling Goldline, you will receive a 90% silver coin of its choice. It's absolutely free, along with the free investor kit. So call Goldline, 1-877-365-COIN, 1-877-365-COIN.
Mark Levin.
Report released by the NFL, it appears a football player was bullying a football player. I mean, come on, folks. That's been going on forever. And I also see, while I may comment quickly, there's now a big push for government health care for illegal aliens. Well, guess what? This is Ray Charles for you. I'll be right back.
Oh, beautiful.